You know, expected. It was an expected outcome. I did a piece on ZNet about how that was going to happen. And it's obviously critical, obviously historic, and it's the subject of my next book that I'm doing with a fellow that's spoken here named Tony DiMaggio. Tony and I are doing a study called Crashing the Tea Party. And it's real hot in my mind right now because, as you might imagine, we're crunching all the numbers, looking at all the election stuff, all the exit polls, and so we're doing our afterward on that. So the temptation was very strong just to talk about that. But I am selling this book. It's not what's advertised here. I'm here to talk about Barack Obama and the future of American politics. Excuse me, I'm here to talk about the empire. I'm here to talk about the empire's new clothes, Barack Obama and the real world of power. By the way, they really had to talk me into doing another book with Barack Obama in the title, and I was sure I was just going to be doing a long afterword to a paperback edition of this, but that's not how it went down. And I'm going to get to the Tea Party thing. Well, the Tea Party thing. I'm going to get to the midterm thing in the end, anyway. And by all means, let's talk about it in Q&A, question and answer. I'll be happy to engage and hear what people have to say about what happened last Tuesday. I have a line at the end. I had a piece in ZNet last week. I think it was on ZNet, www.communications.com. Called The Democrats' Coming Debacle. And one of the things about this was how completely everybody knew it. You know, we all knew that there was going to be this historic turnover, this sweeping Republican victory. And I had this line at the end of that essay where I said that I wanted Obama to be elected in 2008 for what might strike people as a curious reason. And I think Bob said some of it already. I thought it was essential for American citizens, and particularly millennials, particularly so-called millennials, 19 to 29-year-olds, you know, kids. You reach a certain age when people in their 20s become kids, and I reached that age some time ago. Really needed a direct experience of the bipartisan nature of the corporate and imperial system, of the fake democracy that exists in the United States of America. They needed to have a lived experience. They couldn't just have lectures from old fogies and history professors like me, I'm a former history professor, about how, you know, LBJ and JFK and Harry Truman and Jimmy Carter and Bill Clinton and the Democrats always sell out the working people and screw the left and co-opt the progressives and so on and so forth. That at a certain point you had to have that experience. When you think about it, and a lot of kids in their 20s, what is their cognizant political experience with all this miserable crap that's been going on? It's been Bush. It was George W. Bush, and it was essential for there to be a party change, a brand change, a shift over in who's who. And I think that could have happened with Hillary Clinton as well. But I did want the Democrats to get in. I also wanted people to have an object lesson in the fact that elections cannot be our salvation. I am not so much pissed off at people though I am pissed off at liberals in campus towns and all over the country for projecting false progressive hopes onto Obama, who I knew from experience in Chicago to be a very slippery and corporate neoliberal politician, like many other politicians. That ticks me off, but my main issue has always been people's willingness to accept the dominant definition of politics as being all about the quadrennial, mass-marketed, corporate-crafted, big money, big media, narrow spectrum, candidate-centered electoral extravaganzas that the masters stage for us every, 2, 4, and 8 years, and telling us, that's politics. That's the only politics that matter. We really need to, and I think what's going on right now is an object lesson. And when you think about the comparison of the United States and Western Europe right now, particularly France and Greece, we really need to focus on developing a politics that be beneath and beyond the election cycle, and rebuild social movements in this country, and start thinking about changing the game of politics in general, like they do in Europe, quite frankly, from the bottom up, with regular mass protests and social movement activity every day. Now, I'm not an anti-election person. Better better Roosevelt than Herbert Hoover. Better anybody than George W. Bush, I think. But big deal. That takes about 2 minutes. The real thing is, what do you do? What do you do after those 2 minutes? Howard Zinn, the late great Howard Zinn, used to say, what matters is not who's sitting in the White House, really, at the end of the day. It's who's sitting in the cafeterias, in the workplaces, in the schools, in the offices. That's how real change occurs. There's a couple quotes I forgot to put in my presentation, and I want to give them since I forgot to, and I added on late, and they strike me as they were kind of relevant to the topic. And one of them is from this very brilliant and interesting, prolific liberal left writer, William Greider, who had a Washington Post column last year that I just wanted to quote from because it was so nice a take on what happened with Obama. And Greider did a column in the Washington Post titled, "Obama asked us to speak, but is he listening? People everywhere," Greider wrote, "have learned a blunt lesson about power. Who has it and who doesn't? They have watched Washington run to rescue the very financial interests that they created the economic catastrophe. They have learned that government has plenty of money when the right people need it." A blunt lesson of power. I remember at some point in 2009, Obama and the Detroit News explaining, and USA Today explaining that we couldn't have a real second and significant economic stimulus because he said we don't have the money. Well, isn't it interesting how the government is always sort of out of money when it comes to the left hand of the state, to any of the parts of the public programs and any aspects of government that were won through past popular victories that serve poor people, working class people, that serve equality. But they seem to have extraordinary amounts of money. They this whole image of the, with the pockets out and there's nothing in there is completely false when it comes to things like the prison industrial complex, when it comes to the Pentagon system, which is actually $1 trillion a year, accurately tabulated, which pays for half of the military spending in the world under Obama as under Bush, which supports more than 1,000 military bases across more than 150 countries across the world. And I could go on and on and on. I don't know if you know, Obama became the all-time kingpin of corporate welfare in his first 3 months. No president ever transferred more taxpayer dollars in that short a period of time to elite financial interests. That was one quote that I wanted to remember, the greater one. The other one was this from Stan Goff. It was a very interesting military veteran and anti-war activist. "I'm glad Obama was elected," said Stan. "Otherwise, people would have blamed the continuing wars on McCain and the Republicans and continued with the delusions that elections can be our salvation. You can change the executive director," Stan Goff said, "but he or she is still the commander-in-chief of the empire. That's the job description." The title of this book